Part 24. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishita De. Chapter 231. I protest. Although Bihexia didn't know what had just happened, protesting was definitely the right choice at this moment. Protest is invalid. Gao Qiang rejected Bihexia's protest without hesitation. Well, since you have made up your mind, please follow me next. Henry stood up and signaled the adjutant with his eyes to lead the way. The adjutant nodded in understanding, and then led everyone to the top of Yongle Pass. With the thickness of this dam, even if hundreds of people walk side by side on the top of this dam, they would not feel crowded at all. Unfortunately, the position that was once used to place the giant cannon has all turned into a charred piece. Standing on a piece of pure land that had not been bombed, Henry took out the share documents and looked at the sea below. Because the sea fortress was attacked, at this moment, in addition to the ceasefire guard fleet, there were several fleets belonging to the company to come to support. But what they didn't expect was, even though they came fast enough, the general office was still attacked by Gao Qiang. Lost the order of the board of directors. When facing the century-old warship blocking the Yongle Pass, no captain chose to open fire. Obviously, they were hesitating. Now Henry took out the company's share documents, breaking the hesitation in their hearts. As a captain who was mixed in the company's headquarters, they were not unfamiliar with Henry, the governor. It is better to say that sitting in such a high position, many people have a certain personal relationship with Henry, and no one can tell the relationship. Now seeing that the person who took the company's share documents was Henry, even if many people were dissatisfied, they did not make any strange sounds. But the next moment, a captain found that the warships on his side were quietly surrounding him. Henry stroked his mustache and smiled. As the governor of the company, it was not difficult to revolt a small number of captains through the company's network of relationships. As early as when several nearby fleets were heading towards the sea fortress, he had tried to get in touch with some of the captains. These people are not many in number, but the threat they pose is huge. Because at this moment, except for Henry, no one else knew how many people had turned to Henry's side. What if the majority of people turned? Wouldn't they become traitors? Many captains looked at each other from a distance and confirmed each other's eyes. Well, it's hard to tell whether they are enemies or friends. At this point, there is only one choice to ensure their own safety. I saw a well-dressed captain walk to the bow, facing the position of Yongle Pass, take off the captain's hat, and slowly bow. That's right. Choosing to persist is to put the risk above the loyalty and conscience of others. And this is exactly what the captains of the company lack the most. Under the psychological game, the risk of turning against the enemy is the smallest. As long as everyone chooses to turn against the enemy, the risk of turning against the enemy will be directly reduced to zero. In the end, it was as Henry expected. All captains, including the guards fleet, finally chose to admit their status. Well, since everyone has no objection, I will announce the new law next. Henry took out a pre-written note. After I take office, the company will implement a new tax bill. On the basis of the original tax law, those who shelter foreigners will be taxed. Those who hide foreigners privately will be taxed. Those who see foreigners but do not take hostile measures will also be taxed. Hearing Henry's tax increase policy, many captains took a breath of cold air, and there was a silence on the sea. But the next moment, Henry continued. Capture foreign lords, and each capture can be taxed. Tax deduction? Many captains were stunned. How long has this terrifying word not appeared in the company's dictionary? Such a vicious word, if Henry did not mention it today, no one would remember it at all. Are you serious? A captain shouted loudly. Henry glanced at the direction of the person who spoke. Add one more thing, questioning the tax deduction bill will be taxed. Hearing Henry's words, the person who just questioned shut up obediently. But at this point, many captains have understood Henry's determination. It is conceivable that after today's words are spread, this sea will change. After all, in this sea, even plundering needs to be taxed. Only under the company's rules can you understand how great the temptation of tax deduction is. From now on, the lords of the Blood Clan and the Sea Clan will no longer be ordinary lords, but walking tax deduction coupons. As long as the company does not fall, no governor, pirate, or merchant can resist this temptation. Where are our enemies hiding? On the Phoenix, Mike, holding a new pipe, angrily scolded his generals. It has been a long time since the siege. Because of the emergence of the Century ship, the military's losses are less than expected. After reuniting the leadership, Mike did not hesitate to summon thousands of military lords and swept towards the 9 major waterways. This time, even if he was besieged by 3 parties again, Mike could barely guarantee his superior firepower. However, what Mike did not expect was, when he tried to find the Vampire and Sea Clan lords, he couldn't find them. On a vast sea, the Vampires and Sea Clans, which had been rampant for several years, seemed to have evaporated from the face of the earth, and the intelligence department couldn't find any news. "It's the company." A voice came from behind Mike. Yulawai walked slowly to Mike's side and told him the intelligence collected by the special forces. The company has issued a policy of using the Vampire and Sea Clan lords to offset taxes, which has led to a hunting craze on the sea. In addition to governors, merchants, and pirates from all over the world, even adventurers have joined this grand carnival. That is to say, for now, there are too many monks and too little meat, and those lords should not have a share for us. Listening to Yulawai's words, Mike fell into silence. He had been lying on straw and eating bitter food for several years, and now he was told that he couldn't use the superior firepower. This made Mike feel like he had been accumulating energy for a long time, but ended up punching cotton. At this time, the prompt sound of the war game came. In this war game, the number of surviving lords is less than 50%, and the victory condition of the war is about to be triggered. I didn't expect it to end so soon. In the main mansion, Gao Qiang raised his head and looked out the window. The time when the victory of the war begins to be judged is when the number of surviving lords is less than 40%. At this moment, under Yang'ul Pass, slave ships full of iron cages drove in, and the iron cages were full of Blood Clan and Sea Clan lords. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida De. Chapter 232. These lords will soon be handled by the company and sent to a specific location, which will be converted into contribution points in Gao Qiang's hands. If only the number of lords is counted. Then after these slave ships arrive, the goal of victory in the war will be almost achieved. Standing up, Gao Qiang stretched and pushed open the door. "Good morning, Xiaobai." Except for Zhuoluo, who was guarding beside him. Bai Hexio also happened to pass by Gao Qiang's door at this moment because he saw the arrival of the slave ship. But he didn't look very good now. Beside the aisle, Bai Hexio's originally clean and tidy clothes were stained with blood, which attracted the passing staff to avoid him. After hearing Gao Qiang's voice, Bai Hexio glanced at Gao Qiang with resentment. Ever since the new tax law was issued by the company, a steady stream of slave ships were transported into the sea fortress. Lian Qian, Huan's hero, and others disappeared without a trace. He was abandoned by everyone again and again. Those disloyal guys. As a result, apart from Zhuoluo, only Bai Hexio didn't have time to slip away, and he had to take over the task of executing thousands of lords alone. Gao Qiang looked at Bai Hexio's bloodstains and felt lucky. Fortunately, one person was left behind, otherwise it would be a hard job to deal with so many lords. "Then you are busy, Xiaobai, I won't bother you." After a simple greeting to Bai Hexio, Gao Qiang walked in another direction under Bai Hexio's resentful gaze. This war game was about to end. But he always felt that he had forgotten something. After glancing at Zhuluo, Gao Qiang's footsteps suddenly stopped. He seemed to finally realize who was missing. "Where's Sasha?" "Ah." Hearing Gao Qiang say this, Zhuluo suddenly realized that for so long, there seemed to be a lack of a little foodie who needed to be fed around him. After recalling it, Zhuluo's expression suddenly became a little weird. Sasha won't still be on the original cruiser. It seems that when they boarded the Star of Tomorrow, Sasha didn't follow them? Gao Qiang and Zhuluo looked at each other. According to Sasha's personality, if this happens, there is only one possibility. Return to the Century ship docked outside Yongle Pass. Gao Qiang found the cruiser stranded on the beach. Because they were not taken seriously, the two cruisers were not dealt with in time and were left there. Walk into the cruiser. Seeing that there was still a faint light in the cruiser, Gao Qiang immediately understood something. Pushing open the door of the kitchen in the cabin, Gao Qiang saw two figures curled up in the corner, each doing their own thing. Sasha was eating various snacks that were supplied earlier on Yushan Island. At her feet, the baskets were scattered all over the ground. It is conceivable that during the time she left Zhuluo, Sasha did not treat herself badly at all. Now I heard the hatch being opened. Sasha glanced subconsciously. Ah, the Lord and Sister Zhuluo are back. So, you didn't notice what happened in the outside world at all? Gao Qiang covered his face helplessly. The roar of artillery fire in several consecutive battles did not make Sasha leave the kitchen. This is really big. But Sasha let it go. As for you. Gao Qiang looked at another corner of the kitchen. Why are you hiding here too? The other person in the corner was Yana. At this moment, Yana was holding a new storybook and reading it with relish. Gao Qiang glanced at the name on the book. The domineering governor falls in love with me. I didn't expect Yana to change his personality. This time he didn't turn over those confusing ethical stories. But take another glance at the stories Yana had already turned over. The mermaid caught by the fisherman is my great-grandmother. One-time cohabitation with hermit crabs. What on earth did you come into this war game for? Gao Qiang asked with a frown. Apart from being controlled by Satan to follow him, Yana really had no sense of crisis. I always felt that compared to the pursuit of the Kabbalah tree of life, Yana seemed to be more interested in the strange attributes of humans. Slurp. Wiping the saliva from the corners of his mouth, Yana calmly closed the book. This is all about studying human weaknesses. After that, Yana carefully arranged the books by his side, and took out a large piece of sandpaper to pack all the books. At least now I know. When facing a human lord, you can find a hermit crab wife for him, so I can win without fighting. No, delete your dangerous idea from your mind. Gao Qiang interrupted Yana with a dark face. Just at this time, there was a sudden explosion in Yongle Pass. Then Bai Hexio's loud laughter came. Ha ha ha, helping the Lord to do things is crazy, just holding on. Gao Qiang glanced out of the window of the cabin. Judging from the thick black smoke rising from behind Yongle Pass. Well, it seems that the company's employees have let Bai Hexio get hold of the explosives. However, along with Bai Hexio's wild laughter, a long series of war game prompts came. Your contribution add 3,200. Your contribution add 2,700. The number of surviving lords in this game has fallen below 40%, the game is over. This is probably the most valuable explosion for Bai Hexio. This explosion directly resulted in a victory in the war. He he he. After the reminder sound of the war game ended, Satan emerged from Yana's body, looked at Yana, and made a sinister sound. Hey, you. Before Yana was ready, Satan had already helped Yana make the choice of settlement. When Yana turned into a beam of light and flew into the sky, Gao Qiang seemed to see vaguely that she had turned into the human girl again. Not long after, in various places of the 9 major waterways, figures began to fly into the sky. This war game is over, and there is little point in staying here. Zhuoluo touched Sasha's hair beside him, then turned around and smiled at Gao Qiang. Well, goodbye, Lord. Goodbye. After saying hello, Gao Qiang also clicked the settlement button. Soon, the traces of the Lord's existence in this war world were erased. Only Henry, who rushed over after hearing the noise, was stunned by the half-collapsed general mansion. Victory settlement. You participated in the total war against the Blood Clan, and your contribution was 43%. You participated in the total war against the Sea Clan, and your contribution was 52%. Since your total contribution to the total war is 95%, you can take away any miracle and the following items you have owned and use them in your future games. Your war contribution is being settled. Since you have 2.98 million war contributions, your contribution will be converted into 298,000 war coins. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 233. Not only did he earn back all the money he earned from the 88,888 war coins he spent on the Saints, he also had a lot of money left over. Gao Qiang shrugged helplessly. With so many war coins, he didn't know how to spend them when he got back. If he wanted, he might be able to buy some strange items, but there was no need for that. And items like the war coins that could affect the entire war game didn't cost more than 100,000 war coins. If you have money but nowhere to spend it, you'll lose the joy of making money. As for the rewards of Total War, Gao Qiang chose Infinite Echoes without hesitation. When the time comes to upgrade to the last stage of the Lord's Path, it all depends on this miracle item. After making the quick choice, the settlement interface once again came to the plundering stage. Looking at the weights rolling in front of him, Gao Qiang suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. If he plundered the land, this time, his opponents seemed to be the Blood Clan and the Sea Clan. Wait, the Sea Clan. Just as Gao Qiang thought of this, his vision suddenly pulled upwards. When he came back to his senses, he had appeared on the sea and plunged into the cold sea water. Gililo. The salty and fishy sea water poured into Gao Qiang's mouth in big gulps. If the war contribution was small, with the power of an ordinary lord, it would be good to create a small pool. However, Gao Qiang got too much war contribution this time with the help of the company. Looking around, Gao Qiang plundered a vast ocean this time. Gililo. After cursing the war game thousands of times in his heart, Gao Qiang gradually sank to the bottom of the sea, and his consciousness gradually blurred. Before his consciousness was about to dissipate, Gao Qiang saw the black ball approaching him, looking at him curiously with his big watery eyes. But this time, the black ball obviously could not give him the power to walk on water. However, just before Gao Qiang fell into a coma, a scarlet hand reached in, pinched Gao Qiang and pulled him out of the water. Cough cough cough. After spraying a stream of water, Gao Qiang coughed and looked at the figure who saved him. It was Satan. He was pretty nice. At this moment, Satan was flying in the air, holding Yana, who had turned into a human girl, in his other hand. And Yana was holding a large bundle of books tightly. Gao Qiang recognized it at a glance. It was the storybook she had packed on the cruiser before. So as a reward for the winner, Yana brought out this kind of thing. As if sensing Gao Qiang's gaze, Yana held the storybook in her hand tighter. 2 large lumps of soft meat covered the storybook, as if afraid that Gao Qiang would snatch it away. Suddenly, Satan flashed his wings and rushed towards the shore of the ocean. I'm about to be discovered. Before being noticed, Satan had to send the two to a safe area. Otherwise, with his appearance, it is impossible to explain clearly on human land. Quickly coming to the shore, Satan threw Gao Qiang and Yana to the wasteland, and entered Yana's body. At this moment, the disc used by the academy to pick up people also arrived above Gao Qiang's head. After several scans without results, the disc slowly descended in front of Gao Qiang, and issued a prompt sound urging Gao Qiang to get in position quickly. Standing on the disc with Yana, Gao Qiang once again returned to the familiar academy. This time, Qi Ling was still waiting at the exit. Seeing Gao Qiang return with Yana again, Qi Ling looked back and forth between the two with a strange look. But he quickly shook his head and told his purpose. Mr. M already knows about your participation in the war game. He asked me to invite you to his office to talk. Gao Qiang nodded. But now that he is an honorary professor of the academy, Mr. M will not come to him to question him this time, right? Walked outside Mr. M's office. Gao Qiang found that a large number of students were blocking the place again. Even though they could not hear any noise in the office, they still showed a curious attitude of eating watermelon. Give me a piece too. Gao Qiang stretched out his hand to a student. Who are you, Professor Gao? After seeing Gao Qiang's appearance, the other party was subconsciously stunned, and then handed over a piece of watermelon that he had never eaten. Where have you been for so long, Professor Gao? But before Gao Qiang could answer, he showed a mysterious attitude and whispered to Gao Qiang, you must have known it. That female junior from Tenglong Group has entered Mr. M's office again. Now everyone is guessing how long it will take for her to make trouble. By the way, if you bet for more than an hour, you can bet 10 times the payout. Would you like to play a game, Professor Gao? Hearing this, Gao Qiang patted his shoulder and passed by. I'll tell Mr. M that you guys are using him to gamble. Huh. Several students were petrified in an instant, and after being stiff for a while, they all dispersed. Dong dong dong. Gao Qiang knocked on the door of the office. Come in, Mr. M's voice came from inside the door. He walked in and took a look. This time, Long Xianyao sat obediently opposite Mr. M, completely without the domineering attitude she once had. When Mr. M saw that it was Gao Qiang who walked in, his face twitched, but he still pointed to the sofa beside him. It turns out to be Professor Gao. I was just about to see you. Please sit down for a while. Gao Qiang nodded and sat down beside him while eating watermelon. Inadvertently, Gao Qiang saw the application for withdrawal from school in front of Long Xianyao. You want to withdraw from school? Gao Qiang's voice attracted the attention of the two. Faced with Gao Qiang's question, Long Xianyao nodded gently. Enrollment was not my plan. But you should know that after this catastrophe, the signboard of Tenglong Group may not be able to be maintained, Mr. M reminded. Although Long Xianyao showed hostility to him several times. But as Long Xianyao's counselor, he needs to be responsible for his students after all. Sorry, Long Xianyao shook her head. That's why I need to go back and pick up the signboard of Tenglong Group again. Mr. M, let her go, Gao Qiang suddenly said. War games are a place where people will die after all. Since Long Xianyao is not interested in this, there is no need for them to force Long Xianyao to stay. The college as a backer may become a kind of constraint for Long Xianyao. Mr. M sighed helplessly and signed Long Xianyao's application for withdrawal. Thank you. Long Xianyao did not make a big fuss this time, but just said thank you softly, and then quietly left the office. Okay, let's talk about you next. After Long Xianyao left, Mr. M's eyes suddenly became sharp. Looking at Gao Qiang, can you save your mind and not be so conspicuous? The military has just sent a negotiation. 5-star General Mike will soon face a military court trial headed by the Grand Marshal. And you must be there. Lord of all people, Am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, me she did. Chapter 234. Do I have to be there too? Gao Qiang was a little surprised, and the watermelon seeds in his mouth fell to the ground. I helped them anyway, didn't I? If it weren't for his century-old warship that took on all the pressure from the company this time, the military would not only have to face the threats of the Blood Clan and the Sea Clan, but also the company's frontal encirclement and suppression. How could they cope with it? And once they fail in this war game, involving 2 city-level administrative districts, the losses caused will be devastating. Well, Mr. M held his chin and was silent for a while. Based on the good things you have done these few times, the guys in the military probably won't think so. In the eyes of some senior military officials, there is actually no difference between you and Mike. Hearing this, Gao Qiang was stunned. Is it a problem of the scale of land plunder? You still know? Mr. M rolled his eyes. For the military, excessive loss of important land and excessive acquisition of useless land are both troublesome. Because these two options have caused a consequence: breaking the balance of the existing order. This time, the total amount of land you and the lords of the military looted is a bit outrageous. The wasteland under your highest institution of learning is fine, but the military is different. Since the last time there was an extra 800 square miles of land between the 2 city-level administrative districts, there is now a large inland lake. Originally, the 2 city-level administrative districts were less than half a day's drive away, but now they need to drive a boat to connect them. Who do you think needs to clean up this mess? The answer is obvious. All these messes will be piled up in the hands of the military. First, remove the pests that may appear in the new land, and then find a way to make the 2 city-level administrative districts communicate with each other again. If Gao Qiang stood in that position, he must have been overwhelmed. Glanced at Gao Qiang. Mr. M's tone softened slightly. Don't worry, I will go with you this time. Their main target is Mike, and they won't do anything to you. But with this kind of thing, I think the military is likely to impose certain restrictions on you. After saying that, Mr. M stood up. Calculate the time, the helicopter from the military to pick us up is ready, follow me. When leaving the office, most of the students outside the door had already left. When Yana saw Gao Qiang coming out, she wanted to follow him, but Gao Qiang shook his head to stop her. Soon she came to the exit of the highest institution of learning. Several fully armed soldiers were standing here waiting. Gao Qiang thought the other party's attitude would not be very good. But what he didn't expect was that after several soldiers took off their goggles, they showed a smiling expression. They even greeted him very enthusiastically and tried to shake Gao Qiang's hand. Hello, hello, I guess you are Professor Gao who won the war game with General Mike. We are the escorts sent to take you to the military court. Which one? Several soldiers suddenly whispered, when we see General Mike, can you help us get an autograph? This attitude made Gao Qiang feel uncomfortable. When he was rescued, the soldiers led by Bayanian did not give him such a good face. Turning his head to look at Mr. M shrugged his shoulders as if he was used to it. Mike is the most famous 5-star general in the military. You can understand him as a star and idol in the eyes of the soldiers. It is easy to understand this way. There are fanatical fans everywhere. On the contrary, Mr. M couldn't stand it. He walked in front of Gao Qiang with a cold face and blocked the hands of several soldiers. Have you forgotten something important? The cold atmosphere brought by Mr. M made several soldiers shudder, and their minds gradually calmed down. Looking at Mr. M, who was difficult to talk to at first glance, several soldiers did not dare to pester Gao Qiang anymore, and honestly invited the two to get on the helicopter. But when the helicopter arrived at the military court had already opened. As Mr. M said, Gao Qiang was not the protagonist of this military court, so there was no need to wait for Gao Qiang. But as they approached the military court, vulgar words were constantly coming out of it. "It's General Mike." Some soldiers seemed to have a light in their eyes. They seemed to want to enter this military court. But unfortunately, the lowest ranking officer who made the judgment in this military court was a general officer in the military. And all the lower level soldiers were isolated and prohibited from entering. Therefore, several soldiers could only stand behind the two and salute. "Then we will send it here. If possible, please ask Professor Gao for General Mike's signature." Seeing that several soldiers could actually say such words so seriously, Gao Qiang shook his head with a smile. Mike's reputation in the military is really great. Pushing open the door of the military court, Gao Qiang and Mr. M walked in side by side. The sound of the door frame colliding attracted the attention of many people, but it did not stop the chaos in the venue. At this moment, in the seat of the person being reviewed, Mike was pointing at the person sitting in the first place of the judge in the distance, drooling. "I have fulfilled my promise and brought all the boys back before Christmas. And you, a bunch of good-for-nothings, actually want to deprive me of my position. Why? Just because of the stars on your shoulders. This general tells you, you are dreaming." Listening to Mike's arrogant speech, the faces of the people sitting in the trial seats all darkened. The stars included all of them, because those who could sit here were at least major generals. The one with the ugliest face was the Grand Marshal sitting in the main seat. Mike's words good-for-nothings were almost like scolding him. Everyone knew that Mike was difficult to deal with, but they didn't expect him to be so difficult. Who is judging whom? Enough, the Grand Marshal slapped the table and said with a sullen face. "Mike, what do you think you are, a shrew in the vegetable market? You sent reinforcements to a war game with relatively small losses despite everyone's opposition, which led to an irreversible situation. Is this what you should do as a 5-star general? Besides, it is not just the decision of this marshal to dismiss you. More than 80% of the general officers have agreed to this decision. This is not a result that can be changed by your scolding." Mike snorted coldly, tore off the military rank on his shoulder, and threw it to the ground. "Old soldiers never die, and all the young men will remember me." After that, under the kind words of a non-commissioned officer beside him, he passed by Gao Qiang in a huff and left the military court on his own. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Me Shida Di. Chapter 235. What the hell? The Grand Marshal slapped the table in front of him. What does he think this place is? He can come and go as he pleases, playing house. Calm down, calm down. The generals around him saw that the Grand Marshal was so angry with Mike, and hurriedly handed him tea to calm him down. At the same time, someone whispered to the Grand Marshal, "There are outsiders here, don't let outsiders laugh at you." Hearing this, the Grand Marshal took a deep breath and turned his attention to Mr. M and Gao Qiang standing at the door. It can be seen that the anger on his face has not completely dissipated. "Who is Gao Qiang?" Hearing the Grand Marshal's question, Gao Qiang took a step forward, but did not stand in the seat of the person being judged. The Grand Marshal just frowned when he saw this, but under the gaze of Mr. M, he couldn't say much. "Are you Gao Qiang? Then you should know why I brought you here this time." "I don't know." Gao Qiang shook his head innocently. "Don't know?" The Grand Marshal clenched his fist. "Do you need me to help you recall the damage you caused to the lives of residents in the 2 city-level administrative districts?" "Wait." Gao Qiang suddenly interrupted the Grand Marshal on the stage. "Excuse me, these things are not under my control, right? Besides, victory is always better than failure, isn't it?" "Rarely," the Grand Marshal nodded, agreeing with Gao Qiang's speech. But soon the Grand Marshal changed the subject. "You are right, but the land weight you represent has exceeded the tolerance of the military." Gao Qiang learned from the explanation of a general next to him. In order to protect the existing order of the world, the military has a set of strict requirements for the land weight represented by each person. It is divided into two parts, one is the land weight lost when dying, and the other is the land weight gained when winning. The former is fixed, as long as the Lord path meets the standard, it will exceed the limit. So in order to avoid irreparable losses caused by failure. In this world, all lords above level 5 will be forcibly eliminated, regardless of whether they are native or not. For this point, Gaoqiang, who has only reached the level 3 Lord path, is definitely not up to standard. But for the latter, Gaoqiang not only meets the standard, but can even be said to have crushed the upper limit. Just this time, the weight of the land plundered by Gaoqiang alone is enough to match the tens of thousands of lords in the military. Once can be said to be accidental. But Gaoqiang is like this every time. That is to say, every time Gaoqiang plays a war game, it may cause a catastrophe at the end. Obviously, this has broken the bottom line of the military. What they want is a stable life, not a time bomb. The Grand Marshal slowly said, in view of your merits and demerits, after all general-level officers vote, this court will deprive you of the right to continue to participate in war games in this world. But at the same time, this court will reserve your right to continue living here. After that, everyone looked at Gaoqiang quietly. Just like when facing Mike before, the military court is more like a notification than a trial. Notify them that the top level of the military has made a decision. Gaoqiang glanced at Mr. M. Mr. M did not stand up to speak, proving that this should be the bottom line of the military. Otherwise, facing those time bombs with too high power, the military has always expelled them to those planes specially prepared for war games. Think about it carefully. People who are familiar with Gaoqiang have gradually found their own paths. Suyukai stayed in the academy, trying to move to a higher level through the academy. And Long Xianyeo stayed away from the war game, returned to the most peaceful life, and prepared to regroup as a chaebol. Should I go out and take a look? Thinking of this, Gaoqiang gradually nodded. At this time, the marshal's face looked much better. If Gaoqiang also scolded like a shrew here, they would not really tear their faces with the academy. Even if the academy is an external force. The so-called trial came to an end, and Gaoqiang turned and left the military court. Unexpectedly, he ran into Mike leaning against the door outside. He did not leave, on the contrary, he was waiting for someone to come out. He opened his eyes and looked at Gaoqiang. You agreed to the trial of those people who were just sitting there doing nothing. Mike chuckled. I thought you would be the same as me, or even better, and go up and pull the marshal's beard off. Gaoqiang glanced at Mike. To be honest, the military court's trial of Mike was really not unfair, and it was even too light. If it weren't for Mike, giving up several members of the special forces would not have caused such a big scene. But Mike obviously regarded Gaoqiang's eyes as a tacit agreement. Okay, I respect your choice. Mike took out a pipe from his pocket and put it in his mouth. But I want you to remember it forever. You will only be remembered by others for breaking the rules, not for following the rules. Be an unusable talent, don't become someone else's slave inadvertently. After that, Mike stood up and prepared to leave. What are you going to do? Gaoqiang suddenly asked. Me. Mike paused. Of course, I want to let the good guys in the military see the face of the Grand Marshal. Want to cut me? If someone thinks their pen is harder than their gun, then they must have never seen a fully automatic weapon. Mike left, leaving the shoulder straps of the 5-star general on the military court, but his temperament did not decrease at all. He will become a hero supported by the soldiers. But Gaoqiang felt that this was not the path he wanted to take. Unconsciously, Gaoqiang had followed Mr. M back to the highest institution of learning. After a tiring day, Mr. M went back to rest early, and Gaoqiang also walked back to his little nest in the institution. Yana was sitting at the table at this moment, concentrating on the storybook in his hand, and did not notice Gao Qiang's arrival at all. Gao Qiang did not remind Yana of his plan, and fell on the bed by himself, thinking about what path he should take. Gao Qiang found that he had no goal at all. To live? Living was very simple for him. To become stronger? No matter which war game he went to, he was protected by a group of people who were obviously the strongest but very cute. So, what else could it be for? For fun? Gao Qiang had an idea and opened the friend interface and looked at one of his friends. Today is also a cute fairy. Since everyone here has their own path, there is nothing to remember. Then, it would be nice to go to the Saints to play. Wait until you have cleared the infinite battlefield and have enough fun before coming back to enjoy your old age. And I want to eat the dishes made by Juluo. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi. Chapter 236. Poke. A friend message was sent to Ixir by Gao Qiang through the friend interface. Soon, Ixir's message was replied. Today is also a cute fairy. Hey, why are you still poking me so late? No forced overtime, understand. After a while, Ixir's message continued to come. So, since you still have the leisure to come and chat with me, have you finished your work? Almost, Gao Qiang responded. I plan to go to our saint's territory recently. Do you have any way? That's all. Lying on the bed, Ixir in pajamas yawned sleepily. You go to a warplane first, and then I'll ask someone to contact you in a few days. Now, let me sleep for a while. After this message, Ixir never replied again, as if he had fallen asleep. So, is the next step to find a warplane? For Gao Qiang, who has become an honorary professor of the college, this is not difficult. The college's jump facilities can easily do this. Gao Qiang has also confirmed the location of the turning point. It just so happened that when he came back last time, he got the coordinates of Heiken from GeniusProtagonist, so he would go there this time. After sending a message to GeniusProtagonist, Gao Qiang lay down on the bed and had a good sleep. At noon the next day, Gao Qiang woke up from the bed yawning. Yana was still sitting outside the bedroom reading a storybook. From his slightly dazed eyes, it was obvious that he had not slept all night. He glanced at the unread messages on the friend interface. GeniusProtagonist had already responded. As expected, what he said were all very formal words, most of which were not nutritious. That is, he welcomed Gao Qiang's arrival and someone would be sent to pick him up. Stretching, Gao Qiang walked towards the door. Are you ready to leave? At this time, Yana behind him suddenly closed the storybook. Gao Qiang turned his head and saw Yana staring at him with tired eyes. Obviously, this was not what Yana wanted to do, but Satan was controlling him to do so. Gao Qiang nodded. I am indeed going to leave for a while. Anyway, no one usually comes into this room in the academy. If you have nowhere to go, just live here. If Mr. M asks, just let him know for me. So, you don't plan to take me with you? Yana seemed to hesitate for a moment, but still said so. Gao Qiang suddenly laughed. What are you going to do with me? Although it is not known whether it was Yana or Satan who asked this question. But from the fact that Yana has been obsessed with short stories for a while, and Satan has completely ignored it, Gao Qiang really didn't find any need for him to go to more dangerous human areas. From a safety perspective, just to avoid the Kabbalah tree of life, it is more than enough for Yana to hide in his small room. So, have you forgotten what I said? Yana suddenly stood up and reached out to pack up the storybooks scattered on the table. I will help you get rid of the mother tree and completely eliminate the threat. Before that, I will follow you. After saying that, Yana had already sorted out the storybook and followed Gao Qiang. From her yawning expression, Satan had already lifted his control over her. Gao Qiang stared at Yana for a while, then turned around. If you are discovered by then, you can't blame me. After all, the next place they are going to is the land where the saints are. As a 6th level world, it is difficult to judge what kind of power it has, which is comparable to space civilization. What if the other party happens to have something that can detect Yana's identity? Yana followed silently and expressed her intention. In this case, Gao Qiang did not persuade her much. After leaving a farewell letter at his door for those who might want to come and play with him, Gao Qiang brought Yana to the Wisdom Hub. This time, Gao Qiang glanced at the search bar as usual. I casually looked through the comments of Tong Xiao by Shi Tong. Many new hot topics have suppressed the heat of the fallen empire. I sighed that there is no eternal hotspot. Then Gao Qiang stretched out his hand and dragged the interface to the control interface of the jump facility. After entering the coordinates given by Jibaxian before, the infinite computer Omega immediately gave this quote. Requirement, Warcoin X 5400. The jump cost this time is not low, at least for most lords who are mixed in the low-end battlefield, it is already a painful number for them. It seems that the area where Heiken is located is quite far away from the highest institution of learning. After glancing at Yana again and confirming that she really has no intention of leaving, Gao Qiang readily paid this low jump fee. In an instant, with the metal disc where Gao Qiang is located as the center of the circle, the surrounding picture gradually distorted. In the process of folding, please stand firmly and hold on, do not leave the safe area, to avoid unnecessary physical damage due to space fragmentation. Thank you for your cooperation. After the programmed electronic sound ended, Gao Qiang suddenly heard a loud explosion next to him. A powerful energy swept over, as if trying to exclude Gao Qiang from this world. The disc also produced a shield in time to block the energy fluctuations around it. On the one hand, it protected Gao Qiang's body from harm, and on the other hand, it stabilized the energy to prevent it from affecting the surroundings. It is conceivable that, if it were not for the Wisdom Hub located in the highest institution, the aftermath of just one jump would cause no less damage than a hydrogen bomb. Is this the technology used by the forces from the infinite battlefield? Before Gao Qiang could sigh more, the picture in front of him changed. He has been excluded from this world. Under the protection of the jump facility, Gao Qiang and Yana were rushing towards a coordinate point. After another explosion, Gao Qiang arrived at the end. So fast. The whole process took no more than 10 seconds. Compared with the war game, the jump facility of the highest institution has also specially increased the comfort level to avoid dizziness and the like. Therefore, the first time he arrived at the target point, Gao Qiang saw the appearance of Heiken. Heiken, is this what it is? It is different from what Gao Qiang expected, that it was built on the blue sea. The so-called Heiken is actually a city built on the Sea of Clouds. The clouds here look very special, and no matter whether it is a building or a person stepping on it, they will not fall down. And the buildings built on these clouds in Heiken are also very unique. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 237. Some modern cities are located between the clouds, and there are high-tech ladders for movement. And some retro houses are located between the clouds. Those houses are like thousands of palaces located in the clouds, looming and appearing, which is also a kind of beauty. Of course, it is conceivable that such houses are not affordable for ordinary people. Because Jibaxian said that he would find someone to pick him up, Gao Qiang did not run around in the unfamiliar Heiken. And soon, a surprised voice came to Gao Qiang's ears. Why is it you? Gao Qiang turned his head to look. Good guy, it's still an acquaintance. Ji Lenjiao, the fourth lady of the Ji family. Compared with the first time they met, she was dirty like a wild monkey, and now Ji Lenjiao has changed her appearance. Her face is white and smooth, and she has a gorgeous dress to set off her beauty. Of course, there are more servants following behind her. Several burly servants followed her, their eyes alert all the time. Ji Lenjiao's temperament suddenly became no different from that of a dandy who was flaunting himself in the streets. And now, she was covering her mouth and looking up and down at Gao Jiang. Turning her head and looking around, after confirming that there were only Gao Jiang and the other two here, Ji Lenjiao was sure that the person Ji Bixian asked her to pick up was Gao Jiang. So the person Daddy asked me to pick up was you. Coming to Gao Jiang, Ji Lenjiao showed a curious look. Tell me quickly, how did you get in touch with my dad? I heard that you were going to stay for a few days, and Dad got up at night and asked the servants to clean up a guest room. So you don't know anything. Gao Jiang looked at Ji Lenjiao with a strange face. Previously, he heard from Ji Bixian that he heard the news from Ji Lenjiao. But now it seems that it was all reported by the servants, and it has nothing to do with Ji Lenjiao. This fourth lady seems to be a little bit stupid. Of course, Gao Jiang would definitely not say these words to his face. Forget it, I'll just take you back to my father anyway. Ji Lenjiao shook her head and waved to Gao Jiang and Yana. Come with me. Ji Lenjiao did not take out any high-end looking vehicles, but took Gao Jiang to a ladder to heaven that he had seen before. The so-called ladder to heaven is actually no different from an elevator. After the servants paid a few dollars for the toll, several people successfully climbed up. In Ji Lenjiao's words, these convenient facilities set up in various parts of Haikan are not only cheap, but also convenient, which is much easier than driving a vehicle by yourself. Along the way, she also introduced the current situation of Haikan to Gao Jiang. First of all, the existence of the Sea of Clouds comes from the territory that human ancestors won a long time ago. Under human development, it was discovered that these clouds can not only withstand a 100-meter-high building without falling, but also can choose objects that the clouds can support. It is this point that directly led to the birth of Haikan. When Ji Lenjiao said this, countless mud and sand beside the ladder penetrated the clouds and fell towards the bottom of 10,000 meters, forming a waterfall composed of earth and rocks, which made people sigh at the wonder. Ji Lenjiao showed a look of being accustomed to it. Sifting, this is the role of the Sea of Clouds. Every force in Haikan has a private plot under the Sea of Clouds. Every time we plunder land in the war game, the Sea of Clouds will conduct a screening. Under Ji Lenjiao's description, a model specifically for war games slowly emerged. In Haikan, people have given up living on the ground. And the ground is designated as a private plot by each major force. Whenever they win the war game, these major forces will use special methods to make the plundered land appear above the Sea of Clouds. Then let the land fall to their own private plots on the ground. This operation can not only expose many difficult to develop resources to the ground, but also eliminate more than 90% of possible dangers. That is why the value of the Sea of Clouds to Haikan is inestimable, and Haikan cannot allow any area of the Sea of Clouds to be damaged. Entering the war game from the Sea of Clouds is a serious crime in Haikan. As he was talking, Ji Lenjiao suddenly stopped. Yes, we are here. Ji Lenjiao pointed forward with one hand, this is my home. Gao Jiang looked up. The Ji family also adopted a retro design. But it is completely different from those short bungalows that Gao Jiang had seen before. It can only be said that it is worthy of being the dominant force in Haikan. With the same retro design, the Ji family has only one gate, which is as luxurious as a palace. At the same time, the area is also quite large. If it is replaced with a 100-meter-high building, the area of the Ji family can still be left for building more than a dozen living parks. No wonder Gao Jiang didn't see any other passers-by appearing on the road beside him along the way, even if he was riding on the people-friendly facilities mentioned by Ji Lenjiao. It turns out that all the people-friendly facilities he has been walking on this road are specially built for the Ji family. Knock, knock, knock. Ji Lenjiao walked forward and knocked on the door of the Ji family. "Dad, I'm back." Hearing Ji Lenjiao's voice, the door slowly opened a crack, and a servant looked out. After seeing that it was Ji Lenjiao, he quickly pushed the door open. It turns out that the fourth young lady is back. This voice made many people turn their eyes. There are actually quite a few people living in the Ji family, even comparable to a small city. But in fact, most people are just servants or retainers of the Ji family. As the fourth young lady of the Ji family, Ji Lenjiao, once she entered the threshold of the Ji family, she was like a star surrounded by stars. Turning around, she hummed twice at Gao Qiang. It can be seen that Ji Lenjiao is in a good mood at the moment. Inviting Gao Qiang and Ye Na to follow her steps, Ji Lenjiao seemed to show off and said, "My house is quite big. If you want to see my father, you will have to work hard." Just after Gao Qiang entered the Ji family. In another cloud layer in the distance, on the top floor of a skyscraper, a man sitting on a leather sofa began to coil the walnuts in his hand. "You mean, someone entered the Ji family compound and came to Heiken through the academy?" "Yes, sir. The academy is a big force that we can't afford to offend," the man said with a walnut in his hand. He seemed to be talking to himself, but also seemed to be pointing to something. The voice fell. In the corner of the room, a figure walked out and placed a glowing tortoise shell in front of the man. "Our deal has been reached. Next, I won't bother you." After saying that, the figure walked away and pressed the elevator of the skyscraper. After the other party went down completely, the man sneered. "Occasional surveillance in exchange for a rare item, what kind of idiot can agree to such a deal? Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire?" Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 238. Inside the Ji family, Gao Qiang did not expect that. It took him 2 hours to walk from the gate to the main house. Several servants were slightly out of breath, and Ji Lenjiao was not much better. When she pushed open the main house gate, Ji Lenjiao was already sweating from exhaustion. It can be seen that she usually does not seem to be able to walk much, but today is obviously an exception. Ji Lenjiao's arrogant attitude. It seems like she is looking for trouble. They have not met for a long time, and he has not offended her. Could it be that she is still brooding about being shocked by his territory in the ancient times? Gao Qiang hesitated for a moment, but still spoke. "Your family is really big. Of course, don't you see who in Heiken has not heard of the name of the Ji family?" Ji Lenjiao raised her head high and snorted twice. It is obvious that Gao Qiang's words were regarded as a sign of submission by her. He led Gao Qiang and others into the reception room happily. Suddenly, Ji Lenjiao's body stiffened. Old father." In the reception room, Ji Bixian was glaring at her with a dark face. Slapping the table with his hand, Ji Bixian yelled directly at Ji Lenjiao, "I asked you to pick someone up, and you took 2 hours." Beside Ji Bixian's hand, the tea that had been brewed long ago had completely cooled down. What Ji Lenjiao didn't know was, it was because she insisted on walking. That made Ji Bixian, the dignified head of the Ji family, sit in the reception room for 2 whole hours. Okay, my little sister didn't mean it, Dad, calm down." Another voice came from behind Ji Bixian. 3 figures, 2 women and 1 man, walked out from behind Ji Bixian. Among them, the oldest sister was calming Ji Bixian's emotions. Ji Bixian took a deep breath, but didn't say too many words of blame after all. What else can you do with your own child? Spoil him. Hee, I know that daddy treats me the best. Ji Lenjiao stuck out her tongue slightly at Ji Bixian. Then she turned around and introduced him to Gao Qiang, This is my daddy. If you have any problems in Hiken, you can always find my daddy. Like owing money, calling people, etc., daddy can handle everything. Enough. Jibaxian interrupted Ji Lenjia with a helpless look on his face. If he continued to say this, he, the head of the Ji family, would become a bully who owed money and bullied men and women. And a boy who looked a little older than Ji Lenjia behind him quickly stepped forward to cover Ji Lenjia's mouth and pulled her aside. After glaring at Ji Lenjia fiercely again, Jibaxian sorted out his emotions and looked at Gao Qiang and Ye Na with a smile. First he glanced at Ye Na, and then Jibaxian set his sights on Gao Qiang. This must be Mr. Gao, the son of the saint and the honorary professor of the academy. After saying that, Jibaxian pointed to an empty chair beside him. Please take a seat. After Gao Qiang sat down, the servant of the Ji family brewed a pot of tea again and brought it up. Picking up a small cup of tea, Jibaxian looked at Gao Qiang and smiled faintly. Mr. Gao took care of my daughter before. Who would have thought that my daughter was so kind-hearted, but there was still a villain who wanted to kill my daughter. Today, I will use tea instead of wine to toast Mr. Gao. After saying that, Jibaxian drank the tea in his hand directly. The Ji family's etiquette was very well done, but Gao Qiang was a little uncomfortable. Before coming to Hiken, neither the academy nor the military had so many red tape. Of course, Gao Qiang was only here to stay for 2 days, so it was not easy for him to refuse others' face. After drinking a cup of tea, Gao Qiang immediately changed the subject. Come to think of it, since that war game, the Wuji League hasn't done anything to the Ji family, right? Ha ha ha. Hearing this, Jibaxian seemed to have heard something very funny and laughed out loud. Not only him, but the other people standing in the reception room also laughed. Wipe the tears from the corners of his eyes. Jibaxian said to Gao Qiang, don't worry about this, Mr. Gao. Even if the Wuji League really has some power, the strong dragon will not suppress the local snake. We are not in the same world. Even if they can let a small number of people come to Hiken, what can they do to us? It can be seen that Jibaxian is not wary of the Wuji League. Jibaxian even made a promise. As a reward for helping my daughter survive the first war game in her life. If someone wants to hurt Mr. Gao in the future, Mr. Gao can come to my Hiken Ji family for refuge and stay as long as he wants. As for others who don't know what's good for them. Humph. Jibaxian slapped the table and ordered the servants to open the door. Let Mr. Gao see our strength. The moment the door opened, a mecha crashed heavily into the open space outside the main house. Looking at the 2 micro-missile slots on the mecha's shoulders and the machine gun ammunition belt hanging below, Gao Qiang realized it. The Ji family just likes retro buildings to live in, which does not mean that the Ji family is really retro. After all, it is also a family that mainly participates in the 4th to 5th level battlefields. The level of technology possessed by the Ji family is really not weak. In addition to the resources accumulated through war games over the years. Even if the Wuji League is larger than the Ji family, it will inevitably be an extremely tragic war if it wants to cross the plain to attack the Ji family. It is not even certain who will be the winner in the end. It seems not worth it to drag the entire force down to be buried with the son of the Supreme Elder. The fact that the Wuji League has endured for so many years without saying a word just proves this point. After showing Gao Qiang the power of the Ji family, Jibaxian stood up and pointed to the back of the main house. It's also my daughter's fault for making trouble for the 2 of you. I'd better take Mr. Gao to see the guest rooms I have prepared for you. However, Jibaxian hadn't taken 2 steps. A voice came from the sky above the main house. Guest rooms, I don't think we need to prepare them. Who? Jibaxian's face darkened, as if he didn't expect that someone would dare to say such a thing in the central area of the Ji family. The others also looked up at the sky above the sea of clouds. As a result, What came into view was a large cluster of discarded steel falling from the higher level sea of clouds. The air defense alarm instantly resounded throughout the G family. In the seemingly retro G family compound, countless miniature interceptor missiles suddenly appeared and flew into the sky. The interceptor missiles cleared most of the falling steel. But some steel still fell heavily to the ground through the gaps. Boom! The mecha parked in the compound was instantly pierced by a steel bar falling from the sky. The blood flowing from the damaged part seemed to indicate that the driver was in danger. And in the smoke and dust, a man wearing a cloak and whose face could not be seen clearly walked out. "Who are you?" Gebixian asked coldly. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire?" Author, Mishita De. Chapter 239. Gongxin Yushin. After announcing his home, Gongxin Yushin took off the hood of his cloak, revealing a pair of sharp eyes like an eagle. "Are you representing the Wuji Alliance or the Gongxin family?" Gebixian asked sharply. What he never expected was that the Wuji Alliance, which had been silent for several years, would suddenly appear today. Have they been biding their time? Waiting for the opportunity for Gao Qiang and the Ji family to get together? Gebixian's heart condensed. If this is the case, and the biting dog does not bark, the Wuji League must have been plotting against his Ji family for a long time. Facing Gebixian's question, Gongxin Yushin chuckled. "I said I only represent myself, do you believe me? Or, I can remind you that I have a good nephew, his name is Gongxin Jian." Hearing this, Gebixian took 2 steps forward, vaguely protecting Ji Lenjiao behind him. At the same time, he shouted sternly at Gongxin Yushin, "I don't care who you are, but if you come to my Ji's house today to cause mischief, you must have no plan to go back alive." As this round of surprise attacks came to an end, mechas took off from all over the Ji family. Although the discarded steel falling from the sky looks impressive. But this is Heiken after all. Above the sea of clouds, such a blow cannot cause too serious damage. If Gongxin Yushin dares to break into the Ji family alone, then he is obviously too trusting. However, facing Gebixian's cold threat, Gongxin Yushin just calmly took out a piece of iron from his arms. There are runes engraved on the iron piece. Whenever Gongxin Yushin puts his hand on the corresponding rune, the runes will emit a faint light. Seeing this scene, Gao Qiang seemed a little impressed. The Wuji Alliance seems to have some kind of ability to create strange objects. Even the strange objects that the Gongxin sword brought into the war game were made by the Wuji Alliance. Although I don't understand what Gongxin Yushin took out. But Gebixian still had a bad feeling in his heart. What on earth do you want to do? It was you, the Wuji League, who took the lead in using my Ji family. If you fail to use them, can you blame my Ji family? You will soon know what I am going to do. He glanced at the flight path that gradually appeared among the sea of clouds. After taking out the iron piece, Gongxin Yushin knew that he didn't have much time and had no intention of chatting. It is obviously impossible for Gebixian to waste time with him here. Finally, Gongxin Yushin lit up every rune on the iron piece in his hand, and immediately raised the iron piece high. Heaven and earth are infinite, and the universe borrows the law. With the slogan of the Wuji League shouted. A magic circle enveloped the entire mansion. Everyone, including Gao Qiang, received a war game prompt. Because Gongxin Yushin used the strong reinforcement order, wonderful object, you have successfully joined the 4th level sub-battlefield 6572. You dragged us into a war game. After realizing what the other party had done, Gebixian looked at Gongxin Yushin in disbelief. The bad feeling in his heart has come true. Gongxin Yushin forced them into a 4th level war world. And Gebixian once investigated the Wuji League. On the surface, the WG Alliance has indeed successfully controlled a fourth-order world with its own unpredictable methods. And this world has been developed by the WG Alliance for hundreds of years. If it is any world, everyone is afraid that there will be more misfortune than good. Just when I thought of this, all life in the entire mansion disappeared and was brought into the war game, leaving no chickens or dogs behind. A smile appeared on Gongxin Yushin's lips. My mission is completed. After that, he turned around and left before the G family's mecha army arrived. It's just a place that Gongxin Yushin hasn't seen. Hiding in a corner of the mansion, Satan was watching his back with cold eyes. In Satan's hands, Yena was still holding a look of confusion as to what was going on. It seems like that prop can only be used on members of the same race. Satan said to himself. Welcome to Wargame. Level 4 Battlefield 6572 welcomes you. The era of this game is, the Age of Empire. Gongxin Yushin moved so quickly that he didn't give anyone time to react. When Gao Qiang came to his senses, he had appeared in the war game again. The fourth level battlefield seems to be a watershed. This time entering the war game is no longer the perfunctory scene above the sky. Instead, a ghost image appeared in front of Gao Qiang. Start with the first brick, the first beam, the first tile. A gorgeous palace was gradually built high. Countless courtiers in court uniforms walked up the steps of the palace and slowly bowed to the figures on the stone steps. The figure held a square jade seal in his hand and raised it towards the sky. If you receive orders from heaven, you will live a long and prosperous life. The jade seal emits a dazzling light. It was at this time that the war game prompt sounded. In the Age of Empires, one or more great unified dynasties overcame this era. The power of the 5 lakes covers the 4 seas wherever the sun and moon shine, and where rivers reach, it is the territory of the empire. Choose your vassal path, whether to become the empire's solid wall, or to wait for an opportunity like a jackal, devour the imperial star, and replace it. Everything depends on your choice. Your territory type is fixed as Fallen Empire. At this step, Gao Qiang clearly felt that the war game paused. According to Territory Effect 9, you will not be able to become a vassal of others for any reason or under any circumstances, so you cannot enter the vassal path. Effect 9? Gao Qiang was stunned for a moment. If he remembered correctly, the Fallen Empire only had 8 effects, right? When did the Effect 9 appear? But when he opened the introduction of the Fallen Empire, he really had an extra effect without noticing. Effect 9, this territory will not be accepted as a vassal by other forces for any reason or under any circumstances. Territory types can actually evolve themselves. This is the first time Gao Qiang has known about this situation. Because unless there are some territory types with special growth mechanisms, the effects of most territory types are fixed. The Fallen Empire obviously does not have any growth mechanism. But Gao Qiang didn't dwell on it for too long. Because next, there was a new choice in front of him. Your miracle talent, intervention is triggered, please select up to 3 targets to intervene. Gao Qiang first searched for Yena's name on the interface. And strangely, Yena didn't even join this war game. As a second choice, Gao Qiang looked at the G family members one by one. Most of them he didn't know. Among the people he knew, G Baxian, as the head of the G family, might have some special means, and it would be inappropriate for him to be intervened and whitewashed. In this case, let's talk about the mixed man. Gao Qiang looked at a name. Ji Lenjiao. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the Fallen Empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 240. Ji Lenjiao looked at the sudden intervention buff in front of him, with a dull look on his face. Because you have been interfered with. All your characteristics in this game will be reset to 0. Was she cleared? Seeing that his personal talents, territory types, and lord paths were all empty, Lenjia had no idea what was going on and immediately gave up thinking. On the other side, after selecting the intervention target, a new prompt appeared in front of Gao Qiang. Your miracle talent, rereading, has been triggered. Do you want to expand the upper limit of the technology tree in this wargame? Note, after choosing to trigger rereading, wariness of war will no longer be used as a reasonable reason for war. At the same time, the technology tree interface appeared in front of Gao Qiang. What can be seen is that the technology tree spreads in the shape of a tree. Although it is long, the end can be seen at a glance. This is the upper limit of this world. If Gao Qiang can reach the step, others can naturally reach the step as well. Yes. Gao Qiang said immediately. The advantages of history must be brought to bear. Only a longer technology tree can better widen the gap with others. Just after triggering the review, the technology tree interface in front of Gao Qiang also changed. Where it originally ended, branches began to extend infinitely in all directions. Since then, the entire technology tree seems to have become endless, and it is impossible to detect the end. Gao Qiang's research technologies, which originally only had a few thousand, also exceeded tens of thousands at this moment. After all selections were made, the high-intensity perspective began to gradually fall downwards. That's when, among the countless cities on the ground, compasses began to rotate at the same time, pointing in the same direction. At one of the nearest passes, the general who closed his eyes to rest opened his eyes. Turn your head and look in the direction the compass is pointing. Obey, my emperor's will. Lord, Lord. A small hand waved in front of Gao Qiang, and Sasha's curious little head leaned in front of Gao Qiang. What are you thinking, Lord? Sasha. Gao Qiang murmured and pulled Sasha's little head aside. Then he took a look at the surrounding environment. What's very interesting is that after entering this imperial era, he did not appear in his territory for the first time. Gao Qiang is now on a carriage that is speeding at high speed. And beside him, only Juluo and Sasha accompanied him. I opened the territory interface and took a look. Wall of size, Gao family. Residents, 113,200 people. Strength, Tianzhou 20, servants 500. Defense building, fence wall. Production building, none. Miracle building, university. The defensive building this time looked relatively ordinary, so Gao Qiang directly turned his attention to the miracle building. Miracle building, university. Introduction, learn about the ancient sages, gather the learning of hundreds of schools, and gather the words of one family. Effect 1, greatly increase the favorability of the native forces in the war world. Depending on how long the force has existed, the initial favorability is adjusted from 0% to 100%. Effect 2, any lord can send a bachelor to live in the university, and the scientific research speed of the lord will be increased by 100%. Effect 3, every time a bachelor moves in, we gain 0.5% of the cultural victory conditions. When it reaches 100%, the lord who owns the university will force victory. Effect 4, when the university left by your ancestors is destroyed, your territory type will be switched to Awakening Empire, and the game rules will be triggered, World Turmoil. Puff. Seeing effects 3 and 4, Gao Qiang spat out a mouthful of saliva. Can it only be said that it is worthy of being a 4th-level battlefield? Even miracles gradually began to become so abnormal that they became unreasonable. The emergence of universities not only brought about a cultural victory that did not exist in lower-level battlefields. It directly brought this war game into a countdown to victory. If the university is not destroyed before enough bachelors are gathered, it is conceivable that Gao Qiang's victory is already a certainty. And if the university is destroyed, the consequences will be even more serious. Not to mention the unsatisfactory rules of the game and the turmoil in the world, just the fact of depravity and awakening is enough for everyone to drink. Looking away from the territory interface for the moment, Gao Qiang still had one doubt. Is that why you were not born directly in the territory? As if seeing Gao Qiang's doubts, Zhuo took out a piece of rice paper from his chest and handed it to Gao Qiang. If your lord has any doubts, just take a look at this. Gao Qiang looked at the result and was stunned. The paper is blank. At this moment, the war game prompt appeared. You have come into contact with the Dao Edict, and the Dao Emperor's court system has been unlocked. At the same time, next to the technology tree, a brand new ministerial interface appeared in the war game. Gao Qiang understood clearly. It seems to be similar to the jihad system in the feudal era. The way of ministering should be an important system throughout the imperial era, and the misplacement of my birth position should also be related to this way of serving. In this interface, there are countless advancement paths divided by the 9th rank of official position. At a glance, the higher the official rank, the more terrifying the promotion in the Dao dynasty. The most terrifying one is the position of the three dukes. Recruitment speed of the people in the Dao Empire at 10,000%, training speed of soldiers at 1,000%, attractiveness of rare generals at 10%. This is only a part of the stacking value bonus. If the special authority in the empire is counted, the bonus provided by the position of the three dukes is even more terrifying than many higher-level lord paths. As for myself, Gao Qiang looked at the interface of the court official road, and his official rank at the moment was Baishan. Baishan, clean and innocent, ordinary, and have no chance of official career in this life. Seeing this, Gao Qiang directly asked Ji Lenjiao about the current status of the Ji family. And Ji Lenjiao's reply also proved the special situation of Gao Qiang. Ji Lenjiao's initial official rank of the official road was from the 9th rank. According to Ji Lenjiao, the game has just started at this moment, and she is following the decree of the Dao Emperor to go to the bitter cold land to serve. Therefore, she has not seen what her territory looks like yet. The same is true for most of the servants of the Ji family who were unfortunately involved in this war game. Everyone started by receiving the imperial edict of Emperor Wu and going to their own territory to serve. What about me? Gao Qiang looked at the big white body in front of him. If the Ji family went to the bitter cold land, where did I go? Thinking of this, Gao Qiang looked at Zhuo who was quietly beside him. It is right to ask Zhuo when you are in doubt. So, where are we going now? Zhuo supported his chin, pondered for a few seconds, and then raised his head. We can go wherever we want to go.